Before I begin my sermon, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our musicians, Jim and Carolina, for sharing their fantastic gifts with us. One of the real pleasures of being the minister here is all the wonderful gifts that members of the congregation bring to our community. So as Ruth mentioned during the offering ask, earlier this week in our sanctuary, we witnessed a collision between the politics of care and the politics of cruelty. If you attended the listening session on teacher experiences under the state takeover of our school district, you probably know what I'm talking about. You might also have read an account of the session in the Houston Chronicle on Thursday. Either way, here's what happened. The commission that I co-chair created a space for students, parents, and teachers to share their reflections on teacher experiences under Superintendent Mike Miles, which is to say, under Governor Greg Abbott. We're gathering data so that we can understand what is happening to our school district under their leadership. Now, Miles likes to claim that student test scores have improved and school accountability is improving as well. But since he's become leader of our district, we've seen a 48% increase in teacher departures. And in the same period, some 15,000 students have left the district. People are clearly voting with their feet. To understand why, we took testimony for an hour and a half. Some 16 people shared about their experiences. A teacher who specializes in working with non-native English speakers, many of whom lack foundational English, has been instructed by the district to use the same materials in his classrooms that native English speakers use. He's not being offered textbooks that he can adapt to the needs of migrants from Afghanistan or Myanmar or Bangladesh as they learn words for colors and numbers. Instead, he's being told to simply click through the district's distributed slides with their excerpts from novels and Greek mythology. Hardly appropriate texts for students who are still learning basic English phrases. A parent shared about the impact of high teacher turnover. It wasn't just affecting his children, it was harming the entire school. The school's culture is being destroyed, he told us as he choked up. His children are losing their enthusiasm for education. Even more troubling illustrations of the impact of the district's treatment of teachers on education came directly from students. A few shared about how they had witnessed administrators berate, even yell at teachers in their classrooms in front of their students. One recounted how after witnessing such mistreatment, their teacher simply gathered up all of her things, walked out, and did not return. A replacement was not found for the entirety of the semester. The most powerful moment came when one of the students spoke about how the constant teacher turnover impacted her and her friends. She attends one of the city's magnet schools. Her classmates consist of both the privileged and the economically marginalized. In one class, she sits between a diplomat's child and someone who receives free lunch. Prior to the takeover, she experienced her school as a leveling field. It was a place where both had the opportunity to excel. That is no longer the case. Teacher consistency was key to equalizing opportunity. Students could rely upon teachers that they met freshman or sophomore year to help them navigate the college application process. But, she told us, since Miles came on, the majority of her teachers have been bullied out of the school by his administration. It was obvious it was going to impact her friend who was on free lunch. Just as it was clear that the diplomat's child was probably going to be fine. She started sobbing. I doubt there was a dry eye in the entire sanctuary. Imagine if that had been your educational experience. Inadequate educational materials, constant faculty turnover, students witnessing adults bully other adults. Not even talked about the buildings without adequate air conditioning, teaching to the test, or any of the other distressing things that are going on with HISD right now. Consider how you would have been impacted by such an educational environment. Would you have achieved all that you have achieved in your life? I'm in awe of the people, including some of you, who have overcome such educational adversities. I doubt I would have. I spent my school days in one of the better school districts in Michigan. I had consistency. Teachers rarely left. My younger brother had most of the same teachers that I did. We read whole books. We had lots of individualized attention. There were special services for students who needed them. Severely dyslexic, I am one of the students who needed such services, and I was very lucky that my elementary school provided them. I did not learn to read until I was 8. Decoding text only came to me because my elementary school had a special reading teacher. She worked with me one-on-one once a week for many years. I'm exactly the sort of person whose needs are being currently ignored under Mike Miles. I tremble. I tremble when I imagine how I would have fared in a school district that appears to be systematically being dismantled. And I suspect that more than a few of you tremble with me. State Representative Lauren Simmons, one of the commission's other co-chairs, named perfectly what is going on. It is torture. It's trauma, she said. It appears to me to be systematic child abuse. Now, I'm not exaggerating. We keep hearing about how kids are receiving AI-generated materials in their classrooms. Such materials, we're told, are full of errors, which teachers are expected to correct in their copious lesson planning time. No one knows what the long-term outcomes are for students who are expected to learn from algorithmically generated worksheets. It is an experiment. Under Mike Miles, which is to say under Greg Abbott, the district is experimenting with children's education, which is to say it is experimenting on children without parental consent. Systemic child abuse. Given the lack of credentials of district leadership, Miles has exactly 0 degrees related to educational administration, educational policy, or educational instruction. This experimentation should perhaps not be surprising. I'm certain that it would not pass the institutional review board of any university that I have ever been affiliated with. Yet it seems to be being implemented on thousands of children with who knows what long-term consequences. It is an awful example of the politics of cruelty. An element of such politics is worth naming. Is the inability or refusal to recognize a value that we Unitarian Universalists hold central. We assert that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. The politics of cruelty are based on an inability to recognize the truth of this claim of radical human equality. We do not say that this person is inherently worthy and that person is not. We say that every person is inherently worthy. The politics of cruelty are based on an inability to recognize the truth of this claim of radical human equality. It rests upon a failure to recognize that we are all just, in the words of the great W.E.B. Du Bois, ordinary human beings. In opposition to such a position, the idea that we are all just ordinary human beings has long haunted this country's politics, particularly here in what was once the Confederate and is now the neo-Confederate South. In such a place, Du Bois observed, opposition amongst property-holding whites to quality public education has long been widespread. Such an approach to education, he noted, such an approach to education, the opposition to universal education, makes exploitation easier. It makes it hard to connect knowledge with power. That connection between knowledge and power is the basis for democracy. It creates an electorate empowered with the ability to discern the self-interest of its members. Many of the most affluent, those tied to the powers and principalities of the hour, are afraid that the rest of us might come to recognize that the vast concentration of wealth in the hands of just a few does not serve the needs of the many. The president's favorite Afrikaner, Elon Musk, is currently worth around $500 billion. Larry Ellison, another of the president's allies, has assets close to $350 billion. Now, one estimate is that it would only take $67 billion a year to eliminate extreme poverty throughout the world. An electorate aware of its own self-interests might think about taking the majority of Elon Musk and Larry Ellison's combined holdings and redirecting them to the abolition of poverty. We could even leave them with $1 billion each, more money than I think anyone actually needs, while getting rid of extreme poverty for the next dozen years across the entirety of the planet. What a blessing would that be? What an act of love breaking through. Now, of course, there are those of you who might say economics is more complicated than that, but I hope my basic point is obvious. If we had an educational system that empowered us to understand our self-interests, one based on a claim that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion, then I'm certain that more of us would be saying, no more billionaires. No more billionaires. In the face of the politics of cruelty, our faith challenges us to create a politics of care. Just as the politics of cruelty is based upon a failure to recognize everyone as inherently worthy, a politics of care upholds each person's inherent worth. In the words of Sophia Betancourt, president of our religious association, it takes love as our highest value and pushes us to consider, as she observes, what love requires of us. What does love require of us? It is a difficult question to answer. We live in an age of rising authoritarianism and white supremacy. The president has created a 21st century version of the Gestapo to target immigrants. The governor seems to be devoted to the reestablishment of a racialized social order. They both, it appears, are bent on recreating an updated, sanitized, somewhat less blatant version of Jim Crow. Such a project certainly appears to be at the heart of the state's takeover of our school district. What does love require of us at such a time? Our religious tradition points the way. We can consider how, in the words that came from another testimony that was offered in our sanctuary this week, it was from a teacher who, fearful of the potential impact on her of sharing her experiences, told us that she was comfortable coming to testify with the commission because this is a safe place. Because I know I've been to a few services here, she said. She knew this was a safe place about her experience, to share about her experiences, to dissent from the district's narrative, because she had been to a few services here. Such a statement offers a clear attestation to one thing love requires of us in these times. It is to ensure that our congregation is a place that supports dissenters from the politics of cruelty. The struggle to be such a place is central to our heritage as religious dissenters. We are exploring that heritage, asking each other, what does love require of us in these times, together over the course of the program year. And one way we're doing that is looking to our history. That history, the Unitarian Universalist theologian Rebecca Parker and her friend Rita Nakashima Brock remind us, does not hold that paradise, the place where love is realized, is located in a future endpoint, a transcendent realm, or a zone after death. It comes when we recognize that we are already living on holy ground, in the presence of God, or whatever you call the Most High, surrounded by the communion of saints. Our spiritual challenge, they continue, is to embrace that reality. Our spiritual challenge is to embrace that reality. Some of Brock and Parker's most significant theological work has been to uncover how the early Christian church was devoted to empowering people to recognize that they already live in paradise. The first Christians, they observe, taught that God blessed the earth with the breath of spirit. The planet is infused with divine inspiration. For inspiration was originally understood as the act of breathing into. The plants, the animals, the vast greenery of the carbon cycle, the breath of spirit, Genesis poetically encourages us to imagine, brought in the breath of life, the inhaling, the exhaling out of the divine. A blessing we are caught up in the balance of our lives, and which we return to fully when we die. I sometimes name opening ourselves to that reality as undergoing the resurrection of the living. coming to understand that we already live in paradise, a world blessed with the spirit of life, if we only but wake up to that world. If we find ourselves caught in the conflicts, we find ourselves caught up in conflicts between the politics of care and the politics of cruelty. But we also live in a world which, after the rains, after the troubles, after the hard times, we can say with the ancient texts, the blossoms have appeared in the land, the time of pruning has come, the song of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The green trees, figs form on the fig tree, the vines in blossom give off fragrance. We are surrounded, that long-gone religious teacher wanted us to know, by beauty. Our task as a religious community, when we consider what love demands of us, is to nurture that beauty in our hearts and in our world. This is what Christians taught in the first centuries of their religion. Eventually, though, the story changed through historical events like the Council of Nicaea and the Crusades. Christian theology ceased to proclaim, as Jesus did, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Instead, it came to assert that beauty is to be found in the next world. The world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue, is how one hymn summarized this theology. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition has its origin in part from dissenting from such a celestial vision of paradise and trying to return us to a terrestrial one. That was one reason I was delighted when someone shared that she felt safe testifying here. It suggested that this is a place where, at least on our best days, love is present. That presence of love, that feeling of paradise was present here yesterday during Remington Lessie's celebration of life. Perhaps if you joined us for that, you felt it. For a few hours, our sanctuary and fellowship hall was filled with people, punk rockers, anarchists, activists, radical lawyers, Pan-Africanists, modern rebels unto Caesar, who were devoted to countering the politics of cruelty and building a more beautiful world. Now, the vast majority of them do not regularly attend First Unitarian Universalist. Too often, our congregation has treated the paradise, the place where love is realized that we offer, as related to the old Iranian term of walled enclosure. The word paradise, the writer Natalie Rose Richardson warns, contains an ideology of barriers. We adopted the eighth principle, which commits our congregation to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions in the hopes of dismantling some of those barriers. In my last conversation with him, Remington told me that what he wanted most for our congregation was to do the work of removing those barriers and live into the possibility of becoming a true multicultural, multiracial, multilingual community. His vision of love included inviting into our communion his rich collections of friends and comrades. What does such a vision of love require of us? If we are serious about nurturing paradise in this world, creating more beauty among us, it is a question that we must take seriously. Richardson challenges us to remember that most conceptions of paradise exclude particular immoral or unworthy people, pariahs, the marginalized, the evil, the tainted. How must we change ourselves to widen love's circle and cultivate a paradise for all? One way we do so is to continue to offer our sanctuary as a space where the politics of care confront the politics of cruelty. Another is through the hard work of removing the barriers to our own communion. Now, I'll not pretend to know how to fully do so. But the wonderful thing about serving as your settled minister is that no sermon has to be a final statement. Each text I offer is part of the great ongoing conversation that is the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. In the coming months and years, I have faith that we will work together to name and remove the barriers that sometimes prevent this congregation from being what Quillian Shin, our first preacher, envisioned it might be: a paradise, a pleasant, happy place for all, so that we might do all we can to lean into the politics of care and away from the politics of cruelty, restore our school district, and transform our communion to wake up and treasure the paradise in which we already live and which we are called to nurture. I invite the congregation to say, Amen.
Amen.